Lami was a shy 14-year-old who struggled a lot with her weight, tipping the scales at 265 lbs. At Ketu High School, she was the biggest student, often the target of very mean jokes from classmates and other students, making her feel isolated and hurt. Despite this, her school uniform was always neatly pressed, and she carried herself with quiet dignity, though she hated how she was treated at school. There was one good thing about school Dami, the most handsome and popular boy in school. Lami had a huge crush on him, but she knew Dami did not even know she existed. One day during lunch, Dami walked up to her and invited her to a party at his house. Lami looked around, thinking Dami was talking to someone else around her, but she was alone. She was very shocked to know that he knew her. "This is my chance to make him notice me," she said, her cheeks flushing with excitement. Ketu High was a school for children from prestigious and very affluent families, so Lami was determined to make a good impression. This was the first time she had been invited to anything in her 4 years in Ketu High School. She rented a beautiful dress, borrowed a luxury car, and even borrowed money from her friends to buy an expensive gift for Dami. She was very happy and hopeful. "This is the beginning of me and Dami," she thought to herself, staring at her reflection in the mirror. When the day of the party arrived, Lami was nervous but excited. She arrived in her rented dress and borrowed car. Dami was standing outside with his friends, so she walked up to him and gave him the expensive gift. But just when she thought everything was going well, something terrible happened. Dami and his friends started laughing hysterically. Lami's stomach twisted. Why were they laughing? Dami then called everyone's attention, and Lami's heart raced. She thought he was going to say something nice about her, but instead he revealed that it was all a bet to see if he could get the ugliest girl in school to fall for him. The room erupted in laughter. Lami's face turned grey, her heart shattered. It was too much. She turned around and ran out of the party, crying. The humiliation didn't end there. One of Dami's friends was videoing the whole prank, and they put it on social media. Everyone online mocked Lami, calling her mean names like desperado and out of your league. Her heart ached with shame and betrayal, and anger began to grow inside her. She cried for days and then decided to take revenge. "I will make them regret this," she thought, clutching her pillow tightly. For 2 weeks, Lami didn't leave her room. She was consumed by thoughts of revenge. She refused to talk to anyone, but she couldn't hide forever. When she finally went back to school, as soon as she walked into the classroom, laughter erupted again. Dami's mocking voice filled the room, and everyone laughed even harder. Then, from nowhere, Biola, a quiet boy that sat at the back of the class, stepped in. He grabbed one of Dami's friends, who was taunting Lami, and pushed him away. "Leave her alone," he said firmly, his voice trembling with courage. The class went silent. He had taken a stand, something no one else dared to do. Dami snapped back immediately. "Why don't you worry about your own life, Biola? Everyone knows your mom is just a poor housemaid at my house. Everyone knows your mom is just a poor housemaid at my house. She cleans my room and washes my dirty clothes." The class laughed, but Biola's bravery had left a mark on Lami. After school, she went up to Biola. "Thank you," she said softly, "and I'm sorry for what Dami said." Biola smiled a bit, brushing it off, but Lami could see the pain in his eyes. Despite his own personal struggles, he had stood up for her. As they walked, a luxury car pulled up. Dami's driver was calling for Biola. Wait, you live with Dami? Lami asked, confused. Biola nodded, explaining that although they lived in the same house, Dami refused to let him ride in the same car, forcing him to walk home every day. Shocked, Lami felt a deep sense of anger. Dami's cruelty went far beyond her. As she was talking to Biola, Lami's own driver arrived. She turned to Biola and offered him a ride home. He was surprised that Lami was so kind, so he got into Lami's car and they drove off. When they reached Dami's grand house, Lami said bye to Biola as he got out. Biola waved goodbye. He thought about Lami's kindness to him, even though she had had a bad day in the class. But when Biola walked inside, the warmth from Lami's kindness quickly faded. The first thing he saw was his mom on her knees, scrubbing the floor of Dami's house. The room was flooded with dirty water. His mother's eyes were red and swollen from crying. Mom, Biola rushed over, concern filling his voice. What happened? Who did this? His mother looked up, sadness written all over her face as fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away, but they only kept coming. It was Dami. His mother whispered, her voice shaky. He got home a little while ago and just started pouring water everywhere in the living room. I told him to stop, but he started calling me names and saying very bad things about us. Biola felt a surge of anger fill his chest. He knew why Dami had done this. He was punishing them because of what happened at school. Biola's fists clenched as he stared at the dirty water on the floor. He couldn't believe how cruel Dami was capable of being. I'm going to talk to him, Biola said, standing up with determination. He can't keep treating you like this. Just then, a mocking laugh came from the top of the stairs. Biola looked up to see Dami standing there, a cold smile on his face, arms crossed as if he were the owner of the house, looking down on his servants, looking down on his servants. Next time, remember who you're dealing with, Dami yelled. Then, without warning, he grabbed another bucket full of water and threw it down the stairs. The water splashed everywhere, making the mess worse, some even soaking Biola's clothes and shoes. Biola was so angry he wanted to run upstairs and give Dami a beating of his life for all the hurt and humiliation he had caused. But just as he was about to step forward, his mother reached out, holding him back. Please, Biola, don't, her mother pleaded. It's not worth it. We need this job, please. Biola stopped. His anger became helplessness. Tears began to fill his eyes as he looked down at his poor mother, kneeling on the floor, tired and broken from the endless work and humiliation. Biola couldn't hold it in anymore. The tears spilled over, his whole body trembling with sobs. His mother got up from the floor, wrapping her arms around him to comfort him. It's okay, my dear, she whispered as she cried too. We will get through this, and this will be our testimony. But as Biola wept in her mother's arms, he made a silent promise to himself. He wouldn't let Dami keep treating them this way forever. One day, things would change. One day, they'd be free of Dami's cruelty. As Biola and his mother finished cleaning up the disaster, Dami was upstairs already plotting his next way to torment them. Dami tiptoed into the kitchen, looking around to make sure Biola's mom wasn't nearby. He saw Biola's house key laying on the kitchen table. He took it and put it inside his pocket, then went back to his room. Later that night, Biola and his mom were so tired from all the cleaning they were leaving Dami's home and going back to their house, to rest for the night. But when they reached their house, they searched for their house key everywhere, but could not find it. "Oh no! Where's the key?" "Oh no! Where's the key?" Biola's mom whispered, her voice filled with worry. Biola's eyes widened in panic. "Maybe we left it at Dami's house," she said, feeling her heart sink. "I'll go back and get it. Just wait here, Mom." He quickly got into the bus and went back to Dami's house. It was very late at night, and the streets were eerily quiet when he reached the front door. The cold wind howled, carrying dried leaves across the empty road. He raised his hand to knock but froze when he heard voices coming from inside. It was Dami's parents, Mr. Dami and Mrs. Adana, having a deep conversation. Biola hid behind the flower bush by the door so he could eavesdrop without being seen. "He's completely out of control." Mrs. Adana's voice was sharp with anger. "Do you know, he borrowed money without even telling us, and he spent all that money on a party." Biola's heart pounded as he listened. Mr. Dami let out a weary sigh. "None of our children have ever caused us this much trouble. Sometimes I regret bringing him into our home after his real mother died." Biola's eyes widened in shock. What did he just say? He thought, struggling to process the revelation. "Dami isn't their real son," Mr. Dami continued, his voice filled with frustration. "We've done everything for him. We treat him like the rest of our children, but he gives us so much trouble." Biola couldn't believe what he was hearing. Not only was Dami not their biological child, but he had been causing a lot of trouble in their family just like he had for Biola and his mom. He felt some sympathy for Dami, but immediately remembered how badly Dami treated his mom. When Dami's parents stopped talking, Biola snuck out of the flower bush and knocked on the door. When Mrs. Adana opened it, Biola gave her a polite smile, pretending he hadn't overheard a word. "Good evening, madam," Biola said. "I think my mom left her keys here by mistake." Mrs. Adana looked exhausted but nodded. "Oh, the key. Let me help you look." They searched around the living room and kitchen, but there was no key. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of a wall clock filled the silence as they searched. Biola knew deep down that Dami must have taken it, but he kept quiet, deciding it wasn't the right time to confront him. After leaving the house without the key, Biola thought about everything he now knew about Dami. As the taxi took him back home, he kept replaying Mr. Dami's words, "Dami isn't their real son." The boy who had brought so much pain and chaos wasn't even their biological child. When Biola finally made it home, he found his mom waiting outside, shivering in the cold night air. The dim streetlight above them flickered, casting shadows on the ground. "Did you find the key?" her mom asked, her voice filled with hope. Biola shook his head sadly. "No, Mom, it wasn't there," with a disappointed sigh. Her mom looked around. It was late, and they had nowhere else to go, so they sat down on the steps outside their door. The night became colder, and soon heavy rain began to pour, soaking them as they huddled together, shivering and hugging themselves for warmth. Biola's clothes were drenched, and he could feel his mom shaking beside him. Tears welled up in his eyes. He wished he could make things better, but all they could do was sit there, cold and wet, through the long rainy night. Meanwhile, back at school, Dami's behavior was getting out of control. Every day he got meaner, bullying his classmates and disrespecting the teachers. No one dared stand up to his mean actions, and he seemed to enjoy the power he held over others. His laughter echoed through the hallway each time he abused someone and was mean to them. One weekend, Lami went to visit her cousin, Kimi, who was a popular actress. Kimi's living room was adorned with framed movie posters and awards. As they were talking, a notification popped up on Kimi's phone. Lami looked at it and her eyes widened in shock. Dami had sent a DM to Kimi, begging her to respond to his messages, the same boy who had made her life miserable at school. Kimi noticed Lami's expression and laughed. "Do you know him?" "Yeah," Lami replied, still surprised. "He is in my class." Kimi raised an eyebrow, smiling. "Looks like he's a big fan," she said, showing Lami the long list of messages Dami had sent her. Lami couldn't believe it. Dami, with all his pride, had been messaging Kimi non-stop, hoping for a response. An idea popped into Lami's head. "Kimi, can I reply to him?" she asked, a mischievous grin forming on her face. Kimi gave her the phone. "Go ahead. Let's see what happens." Lami quickly typed a message, pretending to be Kimi, and sent Dami a different number, saying, "Message me here and we'll chat." Within minutes, Dami's messages flooded in, thinking he was talking to Kimi, the beautiful young actress. He was so polite and sweet, nothing like the arrogant boy from school. Lami read the messages and laughed so hard. He had no idea it was Lami on the other side. That night, as she lay in bed, Lami smiled. This was her chance to finally teach Dami a lesson. She had been waiting for an opportunity like this for a long time. The next day at school, Dami strutted down the hallways, acting like he owned the place. Meanwhile, Lami, still posing as Kimi, kept chatting with him. They started talking about the upcoming prom, and Dami really wanted to show off his new girlfriend to the whole school. Excited, Dami messaged Kimi. "There's a prom at my school soon. It's going to be a lot of fun." He imagined himself walking in with the popular singer and becoming the talk of the school for a very long time. Lami replied, "Would you like me to go with you?" Dami's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly typed back, "Yes, I'd love that." He was already picturing everyone's stunned faces when he would arrive with Kimi at school. Excitement for the prom was buzzing. Couples were planning their outfits and practicing dance moves, while students without dates searched frantically. But Lami, with her fat body and awkward self, struggled to find a partner. No boy wanted to be seen with her. She was mocked and laughed at. The same went for Biola, the boy who had once stood up for Lami. No one wanted to go with him because he was poor and the son of a maid. Biola, noticing that only he and Lami were left out, decided to ask Lami to be his date for the prom. After school, he approached her, nervous but hopeful. "Lami, would you like to go to the prom with me?" he asked shyly. Surprised and touched, Lami gave him a warm smile. "Yes, Biola, I'd love to." Biola was relieved and very happy. He did not want to be the only one dancing alone at the prom. The night sky above the school glittered with stars, as if nature itself were excited for the big event. But things weren't so easy for Dami now. He had two dates, his girlfriend and Kimi. Not wanting to miss the chance to show off, he broke up with his girlfriend a few days before the prom. You're just not on my level anymore, he said coldly, his eyes scanning his phone as if she weren't even worth his attention. His girlfriend was devastated. She had planned everything for them to have a perfect night, even rehearsing their dance moves in front of her mirror. But Dami didn't care. He was too focused on his dream of arriving with the famous and most beautiful actress. Her tears fell silently, and she ripped apart the corsage she had bought for him. As prom night approached, Lami and Biola grew closer. They spent a lot of time together. When she dropped him off at Dami's house after school every day, she noticed how self-conscious Lami felt and decided to help her gain confidence. They started working out together in the cool evenings, with Biola putting her on a special diet and cheering her on through every step. After school, they would run together at a small park near their neighborhood. The park was quiet, with birds chirping and the smell of fresh grass filling the air, creating the perfect environment for their bonding. Lami was very grateful for the support she received from Biola. She began to feel more confident than she ever had, grateful to have a friend like Biola. She had not been lucky to have any loyal, helpful friend before. People were used to staring at her and laughing at her everywhere she went. But now, every day, she felt stronger, both physically and emotionally. Biola and Lami had agreed to go to prom, pretending to be each other's dates. At first, it was just an arrangement, a casual plan, so that the other students wouldn't laugh at them when they arrived alone. But as the weeks passed and they spent more time working out together, something unexpected happened. Lami began to care deeply for Biola. Biola's encouragement made her smile and feel good about herself. Her weight was also dropping, and she really felt motivated to work out more and eat healthier. By the time prom was around the corner, Lami was looking and feeling like a new person. Her skin glowed, and there was a new bounce in her step. Biola and everyone in school noticed the transformation. They were surprised. Biola was so proud of Lami, his smile lighting up each time he saw her. Behind the scenes, Dami was looking for money to fund his grand entrance. He did not want to ask his parents, as he was already causing them a lot of trouble. One afternoon, the golden light streaming through the window of his mom's room fell on a jewelry box. He sneaked into the room and took his mother's most expensive jewelry and his dad's luxurious watch, his heart racing as he stuffed them into his bag. The tick of the nearby clock felt deafening in the quiet room. He sold 2 of the items, keeping one for himself. With the money, he rented a luxury car and booked a hall for the after party. He knew that all eyes would be on him, the prom king of the night, so he wanted to party more after the prom. As the prom day approached, chaos erupted in Dami's house. His parents discovered that their jewelry was missing and searched the entire house. The air in the living room was tense, with drawers and cabinets left open as his parents frantically looked around. Dami got scared and nervous and decided to take the suspicion away from himself. He accused Biola's mom, who often helped around their home. "Mom, I saw Biola's mom sneaking into your room earlier," Dami whispered, pretending to be shocked. His mom was shocked to hear that, and she confronted Biola's mom. As Biola's mom began to plead her innocence, Dami suggested that they should search Biola's mother's bag. Unluckily, Dami had planted his dad's watch in the poor woman's bag earlier that day. Biola's mom was in absolute shock to see the watch there. "Mrs. Adana, please, you have to believe me. I did not take it," she cried. "I have worked here for years, and I have never stolen anything." Why would I start now? Shut up, you thief! Dami yelled, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. No one believed the woman, and soon the police arrived, their flashing lights illuminating the driveway as neighbors peeked out of their windows. Biola's mom was taken away. Biola tried to protect his mom. He begged Mrs. Adana, saying his mother did not steal the watch, but no one listened to him. As prom night finally arrived, Dami stood before the mirror, admiring his tailored suit and all his jewelry. The scent of expensive cologne filled the room. He was ready to make his grand entrance. But there was one problem. Kimi, the beautiful actress he was going with, was nowhere to be. Dami frantically tried calling her, and just as he began to worry, he received a message from Kimi saying, "Meet me at the school." Dami, who was already sweating in panic, breathed a sigh of relief. He got into his rented luxury car and drove it to the school. The car's sleek black exterior reflected the glowing street lights as he parked outside the venue. He entered the glittering hall filled with excited students and dazzling lights. But as he scanned the room, there was still no Kimi. Just as he started to lose hope, his phone buzzed again. A message came in saying, "I'm outside, come quickly." Dami rushed outside, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement, only to find Kimi standing there wearing a long jacket with a mask covering her face. "Why are you dressed like this?" he asked, feeling very confused. "I have a plan to surprise you," she replied with a low voice, her gloved hands adjusting the mask slightly. Dami was excited because he thought the surprise would even create a more grand entrance for him. He held her hands and walked inside the ballroom, with everyone looking at him and the masked girl. There were whispers everywhere and people pointing at them. The room's glittering chandeliers seemed to intensify the mystery as everyone wondered who the masked girl could be. This was just the beginning of the secrets and betrayal that Dami was going to face, a night he would never forget in his life. Dami had always loved being the center of attention, and tonight he was happy to outshine everyone, like he was happy to outshine everyone like he always did. His ex-girlfriend stood with her friends. She was devastated, and Dami could not wait to show her that she was beneath him. Finally, Dami walked up to the stage with the masked girl he thought was Kimi. He went up to the stage and stopped the band that was playing. He grabbed the mic from the mark and began to speak. "This is my girlfriend, the most famous actress in the country, and the most beautiful girl in this country. She compliments me." Someone in the crowd screamed, "Remove your mask." Dami was so excited to take the mask off as everyone's attention was on him. Slowly, Kimi reached up to remove her mask. The crowd held their breath, waiting to see the mysterious figure behind it. But when the mask came off, gasps filled the room. Standing next to Dami wasn't the most beautiful and famous actress at all. Instead, it was an old homeless woman with missing teeth, unkempt hair, and dirty clothes hidden under the coat. Dami screamed in horror as laughter erupted all around him. His ex-girlfriend laughed so hard that she had to hold her stomach. Even his so-called best friends were giggling. The humiliation was unbearable. He ran off the stage in shame, tears streaming down his face. He ran straight to the parking lot, where he saw Lami and Biola arriving. But Lami looked different. She was no longer the fat girl everyone used to laugh at. She was fit, toned, and was dressed in the most beautiful dress. She walked with so much confidence and grace. Biola looked stunning too, like a prince in his fitted suit. Dami could hardly believe his eyes as he ran past them, but he didn't care. He was too ashamed to face anyone. He was desperate to get away from the prom venue, so he jumped into the rented luxury car and sped off. His eyes were full of tears, which made it hard for him to see the road. His mind was too clouded with humiliation to notice the tree ahead until it was too late. The car crashed with a very loud bang, completely destroying the expensive car. Dami stumbled out of the car. He looked around the car and saw the damage that he had done to the car. He knew he was in big trouble. Knowing that he just destroyed a car he could never afford to pay for, he called his parents to inform them of the accident, but there was no response. He left the car, stuck to the big tree, and took a taxi home. When he finally made it home, he tried to open the door with his keys, but it was locked, and his keys could no longer open the door. He knocked and knocked, but no one answered. He called his mom, but there was no reply. Just then, a text message showed up on his phone. Dami, we know about the jewelry you stole and how you set up Biola's mother and hid her house keys. We are tired of you, and we can no longer have you in our home. Dami, go back to your grandma. You have brought us so much pain and sadness. We gave you everything, but you repaid us with trouble every day. The message read. His heart shattered. He couldn't believe it. His parents had found out everything. His world crumbled as he realized how much pain he had brought upon the family that had taken him in after his mother passed away. Dami could not believe that he did not have access to the affluent life that was given to him. He sat on the doorstep, the reality of his actions sinking in. He would have to leave his school, go back to his poor grandmother in the village he used to live in, and somehow find a way to pay for the wrecked car. He wished he could go back in time and make things right, but it was too late. He had maltreated Biola and his poor mother, and completely forgotten that he also came from a poor background and was only lucky to live with a wealthy family. In chasing a fake life of glamour and sparkle, he had lost everything, and now he was left alone to face the consequences. As he sat by the doorstep, he reflected on all the privileges he had and abused, everyone he looked down on, and everyone he was mean to. He wished he could go back, but it was too late. He cried so bitterly, and when he looked up, he saw a taxi pulling up to take him to the village. Dami realized that whatever a person sows, when it's time, they shall also reap. The valuable lesson we can take from this story is that our actions, whether good or bad, always have consequences. Dami's behavior, rooted in arrogance, selfishness, and cruelty, ultimately led to his downfall. He mistreated others, abused his privileges, and chased superficial validation, but it only brought him humiliation and loss. On the other hand, Lami and Biola, despite being bullied and underestimated, showed resilience, kindness, and determination, which transformed their lives for the better. This story reminds us to treat others with respect and humility, as life has a way of holding us accountable for our actions. Thank you for watching my channel, and I invite you to explore more interesting and inspiring videos on my channel. Stay tuned for more content that will entertain and enlighten you. In the heart of an African savanna, where the sun kissed the earth and the wind carried whispers of ancestral songs, there lived a middle-aged man named Omari Kito. His name meant blessing, and indeed his presence was a gift to the people of his village. Omari Kito's home was modest, a small hut made of clay and thatch, nestled under the shade of a grand baobab tree. This ancient tree, its gnarled roots deep in the earth, was a silent witness to generations of stories, secrets, and wisdom. Nearby, a small stream trickled, its gentle murmur adding a soothing rhythm to the life of the village. Omari Kito was no ordinary man. Though his clothes were simple and his belongings scarce, he possessed a treasure far greater than gold or cattle wisdom. It was said that his knowledge came from the ancestors themselves who visited him in dreams and visions, guiding his thoughts and sharpening his insights. His graying hair shimmered like silver under the sunlight, and his weathered face bore the lines of countless years of reflection and service to his people. A small, worn, worn leather pouch hung from his belt, said to hold charms and relics given to him by the elders of old, each a symbol of his connection to the spirit world. Every morning, Omari Kito sat beneath the baobab, his wooden stool angled just so to catch the first rays of the sun. Villagers gathered around him, forming a circle of anticipation. They came with questions that no one else could answer, questions about lineage, history, and the mysteries of life. Some sought to know their roots, tracing their bloodlines to warriors, healers, or farmers of old. Others sought guidance for personal struggles, a quarrel between brothers, a failing crop, or a child stricken with illness. To each, Omari Kito offered words that were as simple as they were profound. Nearby, children often played in the shade, their laughter weaving through the air like an unbroken thread of hope. One day, a woman named Nia Luma approached him, tears streaming down her face. Her young son, Jabari, had fallen ill with a fever that no healer could cure. Omari Kito, she pleaded, the spirits have turned their backs on me. My son is fading before my eyes. What can I do? Omari Kito closed his eyes and listened not to her words, but to the silent echoes of the spirits around him. The faint aroma of herbs and wood smoke lingered in the air, a reminder of the village's ancient traditions. Finally, he spoke. The spirits are not angry, Naya Luma. They are waiting for you to remember your strength. Gather the leaves of the neem tree and boil them with the roots of the baobab. Bathe Jabari in this water, and you will see his strength return. Desperate yet hopeful, Naya Luma did as she was told. By the next morning, Jabari's fever broke, and the boy was seen running barefoot through the village, his laughter a melody that brought joy to all who heard it. Women pounding grain in large wooden mortars paused to smile, their work momentarily lighter. Word of Omari Kito's wisdom spread far and wide. People from neighboring villages began to arrive, drawn by tales of the man who could see beyond what others could not. They came bearing gifts: a goat, a basket of yams, golden beads, or cloth dyed in vibrant patterns. These tokens of gratitude piled up, yet Omari Kito kept little for himself. Much of what he received was redistributed to the poorest in the village, for he believed that true wealth was measured by how much one could give. In the evenings, the villagers gathered for communal meals, sharing stories and laughter under the star-filled sky. Despite his humility, not everyone admired Omari Kito. In the royal palace, King Malikose watched with growing envy. The young ruler, dressed in his finest robes and seated on an intricately carved throne, could not understand how a modest man could command such loyalty and admiration. The palace's golden walls reflected the glow of oil lamps, but the warmth of their light failed to reach the king's heart. "What does he have that I do not?" the king muttered one day, his voice thick with disdain. Beside him, his queen found herself lazily narrowing her eyes with suspicion. "It is said that the people trust him more than they trust you, my king," she said, her words laced with venom. "They call him the keeper of wisdom. What power does a man like that have if not to threaten your rule?" The king's jaw tightened. In that moment, a seed of jealousy took root in his heart, one that would soon grow into a vine of malice, threatening to strangle the peace of the village. Beyond the palace walls, the distant beat of drums announced a celebration in a nearby hamlet, yet the sound only deepened Malik Osei's resentment. Unaware of the brewing storm, Omari Kito continued his work, his heart heavy not with worry, but with the responsibility of guiding his people. For he knew, as the ancestors often reminded him in whispers on the wind, that wisdom was both a blessing and a burden. The days in the village rolled by like a river's gentle current. Yet beneath the surface, unseen turbulence began to brew. King Malik Osei watched with growing unease as villagers and visitors alike flocked to the baobab tree to seek Omari Kito's counsel. Gifts of gold, livestock, and rare fabrics passed from hands to the man, and the whispers of his wisdom carried farther than the king's decrees. "Why do they go to him instead of seeking my guidance?" Malik Osei fumed one evening, pacing the polished clay floors of his royal palace. His wife, Queen Zara, reclined nearby, her expression a mixture of irritation and scheming. The faint scent of sandalwood incense filled the chamber, failing to calm the storm within the king. "Because they see something in him they do not see in you," she said, her voice sharp like a blade. "If the people trust a man like him more than their king, it weakens your rule." The king paused, her words igniting his temper. He turned to face her, his eyes blazing. "He is a fool who hides behind riddles and the words of spirits. I am the king. It is I who have built trade routes, conquered enemies, and filled this village with prosperity. Yet they shower him with praise and gifts." Queen Zara sat up, a sly smile curling her lips. "Then remind them who holds true power, my king. Omari Kito may speak to the spirits, but you command warriors, wealth, and the throne. If he is a thorn in your side, pluck it out before it festers." The king pondered her words. He knew his wife was right, and Omari Kito's influence was growing. With influence came power. That night, as the wind whispered through the palace corridors, Malik Osei resolved to take action. Outside, the silhouette of the palace loomed against the dark sky, a symbol of strength and ambition. The next day, the king summoned his council of elders to the royal mansion. The room, lit by shafts of sunlight streaming through narrow windows, hummed with tension. The elders, men of wisdom and age, sat cross-legged on woven mats, their faces a mosaic of curiosity and concern. "I have called you here," Malik Osei began, his voice steady but edged with anger, "because there is a matter that threatens the unity of our village. This man, Omari Kito, has grown too bold. His influence spreads like weeds in a fertile field, and I fear it will choke the loyalty of our people." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Chief Elder Jabari, A man whose white beard mirrored the baobab's roots finally spoke. My king, Omarikito, has done no harm. He offers wisdom to those who seek it. The people respect you for your leadership and him for his guidance. Can they not honor both? Omari Kito's fist slammed onto the low wooden